Thank you, everyone who is joining us today. As I think you know, but I will start by introducing myself. I am Miss Rosie Mitchell. I'm the Director of Entrepreneurship and Innovation, and I'm so excited for today's speaker because, as you know, we have a really growing, robust entrepreneurship program at Marlboro. And this year in particular, we are offering our first ever class that has a focus on food and entrepreneurship, where we're going to be studying different foodpreneurs and getting a better understanding of just what the ecosystem looks like around developing innovative food products. And I would say Marlboro in general, next year we're rolling out a new course about food justice. So looking at food insecurity, particularly in Los Angeles. And then we also have a science course, which runs every other year, which is the science of food. So we definitely like to eat at Marlboro. That is, I would say, a big part of Marlboro culture. And of course, we have our CEI kiosk, which is led by our Entrepreneurship Club, Entrepreneurship Club is hosting this event today. And so without further ado, I'm going to pass it off to Laura and Ashley to get us started and to take it from here.
Hi, my name is Laura. I am currently a junior at Marlboro, and I am the co-president of Entrepreneurship Club along with Ashley.
Hi everyone, my name is Ashley. I'm also a junior at Marlboro, and I am the other co-president of Entrepreneurship Club.
And should we have Christina introduce herself a little bit?
Sure. Well, I think we're going to read her bio, but yes, Christina, if you would like to start by introducing yourself, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, I'm Christina Appleton. I am founder and CEO of Appletons Market, which is a newly launched CPG food business right here in Los Angeles, about 3 miles away from Marlboro.
Perfect. Okay, so to kind of elaborate on Christina and her backstory, while most other people go to a grocery store, Christina literally grew up in one. She is a fourth generation grocer who lived above her family's store. The original Appletons Market was a mom and pop grocery store founded by her great grandparents in a small town in Michigan. And passed down through the generations, the store was her home. It was where she learned is where she rode her tricycle through the aisles and built paper towel forts. And it's also where she fell in love with food, and it forever shaped her career. Once she graduated from Northwestern, she worked at General Mills in brand management, working on brands that we may know, such as Trix cereal and Green Giant vegetables.
After attending Harvard Business School, she moved to Los Angeles and worked in entertainment before catching up the startup bug and making her way into the CPG by joining a healthy e-trailer, Thrive Market. Focusing on better-for-you products quickly became her passion. She created her own business to help make everyone's lives a little bit easier and a little bit healthier, which was the birth of her Appletons Market. Please join us today in welcoming Christina. Okay, so our first question is, what was your high school experience like, and did you always know what you would want to start and run your own business?
Great question, especially given, and I think we might talk about it a little bit later, but my freshman year roommate went to Marlboro. And so I learned very quickly how different my high school experience was from hers. I went to a kind of mid-sized public school in Michigan, where it's kind of like you live in the area, so you go to school there. And it was, I would say, not terribly academically rigorous. Our sports teams were great. Our girls basketball team went to the state championships, all of that kind of great stuff. But I was one of 3 people who went to college out of state after graduation. And I think one of like 5 people that even took the SATs, because in the Midwest, everyone does the ACTs. And so yeah, I was kind of winging it, to be honest, when I got to college. I wasn't terribly prepared for Northwestern. And fortunately, college is tough for everybody that first quarter semester, kind of depending on where you go. So I was with good company, and we all kind of figured it out together. And I think, high school was a great experience for me in terms of honing some leadership skills and that type of thing. But academically, it definitely was a shift going to college. And in terms of entrepreneurship, I actually didn't want to be an entrepreneur because my parents were small business owners. I really only saw the downside as a kid. It was, you can't really take as many vacations because you have to find people that you trust to run your business when you're gone. And if the power goes out, kind of like what's happening in Texas right now, if the power goes out, that's all of your inventory that is now spoiled. And so it just seems like kind of a not great situation to be in. I was like, oh, I'd much rather just kind of like have somebody give me a regular paycheck. I get my 2-3 weeks of vacation. I do my own thing, which is why I went to work at General Mills after graduation. But ultimately, after a while, I think, nature versus nurture. I come from a family of entrepreneurs. And so really found that forging my own path was what was going to be the most satisfying to me.
Thank you. You kind of touched on this a little bit, but you went to Northwestern for college where you ended up rooming with a Marlboro alum, which is very interesting for all of us and exciting. What was your experience like in college, and is there anything that you would do differently?
Yeah, college was really fantastic. I was just talking about it. So my life partner also went to Northwestern. We didn't date at Northwestern, but we did kind of reconnect afterwards. Most of my best friends I got in college, and my roommate who went to Marlboro is actually still one of my very close friends. She ended up coming back here and lives in Encino with her husband who went to Harvard Westlake, and now their kids who are the boys, so they're probably going to be going to Harvard Westlake too. So it was, like I said, it was, challenging at first just because I didn't have as rigorous of an academic background as some of the other people that were at Northwestern. But I did have a pretty strong sense of self-discipline just because my school wasn't as rigorous. And so you kind of had to be intrinsically motivated to do well. Versus I know, my roommate struggled a little bit with mornings. Because she didn't have her mom there to be like, you have to get up and go to your 9 a.m. Psychology class or whatever it may be. So it kind of runs the gamut for everybody, but I absolutely love my experience. I loved the ability to get involved with a ton of different organizations and clubs. I think I was on maybe 4 different leadership positions by my senior year. I had some great classes, and I had really great relationships with my professors and my advisors, which is something I liked about the size of Northwestern. It's not so small that I felt that I knew everyone. I still meet people that were my year and I never met them, but it's not so big that you get lost. So for me, it was a great experience, and it really set me up for the rest of my career.
So moving on to life after college, you touched on kind of your job at General Mills, and it sounds like you had a really interesting experience. So what kind of things did that entail?
Yeah, definitely. So I was lucky enough in college to get some great internships. And I know it's old hat for you guys now, but back when I was in school, internships weren't as common. Like you would maybe get one your junior year, but it was a very different game then. So I was lucky in that I was in a program where I took a quarter off of classes and did a specialized program where we worked full time in Chicago. And I worked in entertainment marketing. So I already had that exposure. We worked on like Kellogg's, Pop-Tarts, and that kind of thing. So I had exposure to that side of the business. And that really helped me parlay into the job at General Mills, which for me, it's debatable, but I think my first rotation at General Mills may have been the best job I've ever had. I was working on Trick Cereal. Brand management is just a really cool job. They call it the hub and spoke model. So the marketing person and marketing is really a misnomer. You're really the general manager. Because you're in charge of driving all of the projects forward. So whether that be making sure that your advertising and your marketing plans are going well, or operationally you're making sure that you're forecasting the right amount of products to be, making at the plant, to are we doing the right promotions on shelf at the store? That's all ultimately up to the person who's running marketing. So it's a lot of meetings, it's a lot of networking, it's a lot of FaceTiming with people. There was a rule actually at General Mills that you should never eat lunch alone. And so culturally, I thought it was actually a really nice thing to have, because I think there's such a tendency in the working world for people to eat alone at their desks. But we had this huge cafeteria on campus. It was like a 3,000 person campus, and everything was super cheap. And so you would always, have a lunch date with somebody in the company, and maybe somebody you worked with, maybe it'd be somebody that you hadn't met yet, but that was the culture, and that was really great. So I try to implement that as much into my life as I can now. And then the job itself, I was able to work on 3 really cool brands. I did Trix cereal, which was talking to 10-year-olds about cereal, which is fun. Then Green Giant Vegetables. I went to, I pitched sales to Costco, so I would fly to Georgia, and I'd pitch the Southeast region or whatever it may be. And that was, a little less sexy, but certainly a good learning experience. And then I launched a new product in my last rotation. Was that my picture was on the box, because we launched something with Macaroni Grill, which is like a stock photography of people eating their food in their restaurants, which was really weird to me. And so I was like, I have to launch this packaging and I want to have great photos on it. And so we just went to our local Macaroni Grill, my workers, and I just took it after them. So it's funny because you think, big corporations, it's all very red tape, and sometimes you do kind of random stuff like that too. So it was a great way to start my career. And I highly recommend it for people who are looking to kind of build a strong foundation and learn from others.
Thank you. Kind of continuing down the timeline, what made you decide to go to business school?
Yeah, that was a tough decision for me, to be honest. So when I signed on at General Mills, it was November of my senior year of college. And it was part of the program. So and I think the program is gone now. It was something that they formed in the early 2000s to kind of combat all the people that were going into the tech space. So there was only a few of us that were hired straight out of undergrad. About 30, 40 people would get hired post MBA, and only a handful would be undergraduate level. But the assumption was that you would work for 3 years at General Mills, you do 3 rotations, and then you would go to business school. And if you chose to come back for 3 years, then they would pay for your tuition. This is not as common now. Sorry, guys. But it was something that was relatively popular then. But it also, you're signing up to spend your entire 20s with one company, one job that you've never actually worked for, which is kind of a crazy thing. So after my 3 years, like I said, I really loved my job at General Mills, but living in Minnesota was tough for me. Like, it is just culturally, so LA and Minneapolis are maybe the opposite ends of the spectrum in terms of kind of the attitudes of the folks that are living there, and how people are choosing to live their lives. It's the frozen tundra half of the year, and it definitely, it's a place that's very insular. The thing I love about LA is it's full of folks who grew up here, but also half of the people didn't grow up here, and everyone kind of collaborates and learns from each other and makes friends. And I tell my LA friends about the green bean casserole that I grew up with, and my roommate was like, "Oh, you have to try green mangoes or papayas with lime and chili," and that's what I love about LA. Minnesota was kind of like, you get married at 23, you have 2 dogs, then a minivan, and 2 kids, and that wasn't quite for me. So ultimately, I knew I didn't want to stay there long term because it wasn't a great cultural fit. So going to business school became more of a choice, and it's really, really expensive. I will not sugarcoat that. Like, when you take in the fact that you're not making money when you're in school, you're taking out loans most likely. and you kind of have to keep up with the Joneses, it's about $200,000 to get your MBA. And for a lot of people, that math works because they'll be making more money after they graduate, and the network will continue to pay for itself. So I did a lot of soul searching and said, is this really worth it for me? And well, ultimately, my friends and my partner were like, I mean, you got into Harvard Business School, you kind of have to go. It's tough to say no to that, and the opportunities that presents. And I think that that's kind of how I've charted my career so far, is just saying, can I really say no to this opportunity? Like, this may be something that's outside of my comfort zone. I mean, it certainly was. I don't know if you guys have been to Boston, but like, it's not a comfortable place to live. But ultimately, it was a good decision, I think. But I also see that it's not the decision for everyone. I have a lot of friends who are entrepreneurs who didn't go to business school, and they've been wildly successful doing that as well.
Kind of talking about entrepreneurship now. So a common question in entrepreneurship is, how did you come up with a new and creative idea? So how did you come up with the idea of your Power Veggie Bites, and what's in them that makes them unique?
Yeah, great question. So when I left Thrive, I had worked at a few different startups at that point, and having worked for other people, I knew that I felt like I had the skills to run my own business and start my own business, but I also didn't know what it was going to be. I knew that I didn't want to just latch onto something and launch another app, or, sell another chip or something like that. Not to denigrate people who do that, but that wasn't going to be motivating to me. I needed to have something that was like, this thing truly doesn't exist, and it's really solving a problem that no one else is solving this way. And so it took me a little while, to be honest. I left and I started consulting for some clients, and one I still have, where I run marketing for another CPG company. And I found a personal need, and that's how I came up with my idea. I was really busy during the day. I was working from home, and I would try to nip out and go to Pilates in the middle of the day, or yoga or something like that. And so I often would find myself not having time for lunch. And so it would be 2, 3 o'clock, and I'd be super hungry, and I wouldn't be able to think about what I wanted. I was like that level of hungry that I'm not rational about what I'm choosing. But I also knew that I only had like a minute to get that thing and like start eating it. And so it was, I could have a power bar, an RX bar, or something like that, which certainly got the job done. And it had, nutrients and real foods and that kind of thing, but it was never satisfying to me. And usually that was a pretty sugary choice. Even if it was date sugar, it's still sugar. It's still going to spike your blood sugar levels. I could order Postmates and wait an hour and spend $30, but that didn't really solve my I'm hungry now problem. And I was like, there's really nothing that's giving me what I want, which is something warm, something with fiber and veggies and protein, like all those things that I feel good about eating a meal, but that I can have in my hand in less than a minute. And so I kind of thought about it and said, I think I can make something. I think I can create something that will solve this need. And so I went back in my own kitchen, and I started playing around with different ingredients, and got my food processor out and tested and tested and tested. And I had focus groups with my friends. I went to, back when offices, this is pre-COVID. So I'd work with local WeWork and industrious office spaces and those types of things, and get hundreds of strangers to tell me what they thought of my products, and what would they spend, and what do they think of the flavors, and where do they expect to buy these things, and then ultimately just took the plunge and said, I'm gonna put 3 of these out. So to tell everybody what they are, they look kind of like this, the picture, and they come in these little steamer bags like this. They're frozen. And they're made out of locally sourced kale and Swiss chard, broccoli, carrots, quinoa, cage-free eggs, all sourced here from Southern California. And they steam up in 45 seconds in the microwave, and they're fun flavors. Like, this is sun-dried tomato basil. This one's Mexican enchilada. And then this one is Thai sriracha. And so these were the first 3 that I chose to launch. But ultimately, whenever you launch a business, you want to think, okay, what do the first products look like if you're a product, but know what the next few years of products are going to look like too. So have some things in my back pocket for, 2022 and beyond as well.
Thank you. So now that you, once you had your idea, how did you get started? What were the first things you did to test your idea and see if it would even work? Did you do any market testing to ensure product market fit?
Yeah, so like I said, I did a lot of work with WeWorks and office spaces because I also, again, pre-COVID, my launch strategy was to go into offices, co-working spaces, schools, cafes, kind of all those places during the middle of the day where I could get to people when they needed it, which was I skip breakfast, I skip lunch. It's a late afternoon hunger bust. I'm not going to make it till dinner. So kind of finding people in the places where I ultimately wanted to sell the product was a big part of that strategy. I also, just because I have spent time in startups and time in food, and also have my MBA, I was able to reach out to some people in venture capital and vet the idea with them because I knew that I didn't want to fundraise for my business to launch it, but I know ultimately I will probably have to fundraise at some point. And so I wanted to make sure that, the folks with the money also thought it was a good idea. So kind of once I had tested both sides of the equation, both the customers and the investors, I talked to a few people on the retail side that I knew from Whole Foods and that kind of thing. And, felt like this was something that was really a need in the market and that it was something that could be successful, especially here in Southern California.
Yeah, so once after you have done all that testing and all that research, so once you validated your idea and felt confident that there's a need, what did you do after that? Because I feel like that's a question a lot of our micro entrepreneurship students have.
Yeah, I mean that's the hard part. How do you actually make the business happen? And it took me a little while, to be honest. It probably took around 6 to 9 months to get everything sorted from, how am I going to source my packaging? Like I said, these are actually patented. It's steaming packs. You probably can't see it, but there's a little section right here that has venting on it. So the products are steamed when I make them, and they're steamed when you reheat them. So the veggies are never boiled, baked, fried. They're all steamed. Everything in there is steamed. Gives a great texture. But ultimately, it wasn't easy to find a supplier. I ended up having to figure out how to fax Taiwan, which is not a thing that I knew a skill that I knew that I would need to have. And kind of muddled my way through that till I found somebody who could help me out with supplying it. And then at the actual formulation of the product, I have a friend who's a food scientist, so she helped me out with getting to this is exactly how many grams of this and how many grams of that you need to be a good source of protein for everyone, and a decent sense of here's the fiber and here's what your sodium level should be, those types of things. And then I knew that I didn't want to make the product myself. So in food industry, and especially in California, you have a few different options. We have something called the cottage food business here in California, which is pretty rare, which is a license that you can get where you actually can make food in your own home and you can sell it to people in California. You can't do an e-commerce business where you ship everywhere, but up to a couple $100,000 you can do that. And if you have the licensing, and I think there might be somebody who comes to inspect your home to make sure you don't have 20 cats running around, then you can do that. You just have to label your product as such. Then the second choice would be to run a commercial kitchen. So here in LA, there's a ton of commercial kitchens. There's a really big one downtown LA called LA Prep. And those companies, those are great, but ultimately you're running a kitchen. You have to hire folks to work in the kitchen. You have to manage their time. You have to get them on payroll. You have to do everything yourself. And so in my mind, most of my time would be spent managing a kitchen and not building my business. And so I knew that's not what I wanted to do. So I knew that I needed to find a co-manufacturing partner that would make the product for me. And it was really difficult. because I needed somebody who was able to take fresh vegetables, to chop them up fine, to take raw eggs and mix that in with said vegetables, and then either bake or steam the product and then freeze it, which sounds in your own kitchen pretty simple, but when you look at mass scale manufacturing, that's very, very hard to find somebody who can do all of those things. Because you can find somebody who can bake and freeze, but maybe they're a vegan only manufacturer, or maybe you find somebody who has the baking, all the other capabilities, but they don't have freezers on site. And so the product will go bad before you can get it anywhere. So that was the longest part. That's what probably took about 9 months, because it was, finding people and then meeting with them, showing them the products, testing it out, then doing some small test runs, more test runs, and ultimately coming up with somebody who worked out. And I was lucky enough that I found somebody here in City of Industry. So I'm able to go out and be present for all of the production runs, which is incredibly important, because there are so many elements to the product and that it can be tricky for other people to make, especially when you're making, thousands of them at once. So yeah, I think that's kind of the figuring out how to get to your MVP, or your minimum viable product. And then from there, you kind of got to figure out, okay, what's my launch strategy going to be? How am I going to sell this product? Am I going to go to farmers markets, which in LA, those have about a year-long wait list? Am I going to sell things online? Am I going to, I have a friend she lives in Pasadena, and she started a business, and she just went to her Gelson's and she went to her Lassen's, and she was just like, okay, who are the people who are in charge of ordering the products here? And like, I've got these great frozen grass-fed meat patties, and like, you guys need these. So there's a lot of different ways that you can go to market, and you just kind of got to throw yourself into it and see what sticks.
Thank you. So you kind of touched on this a little bit, but many students at Marlboro have ideas for products, but a lot of them get hung up on how to actually get it manufactured. Who actually makes the Power Veggie Bites, and where does this magic happen?
Yeah. So it was actually it was one of those like telephone chain types of things that happened, where I have a friend who works in food sourcing at another large grocery chain. And she didn't want me to tell anybody that she was the one that put me in contact with. She's like, oh, I know these guys that do frozen dinner meals. So maybe they can help you. So I talked to those people. I talked to probably 20 different people at the same time, people in Dallas, people kind of everywhere. And ultimately, after a few conversations, the people that were here in Southern California with the frozen meals couldn't do it, but they were like, there's actually a Chinese food manufacturer that's in the same city as us, maybe a few miles away. And I know that they can do, I think that they can do all these things. So I met with the team there, and they were the ones who actually helped me come up with the ideas to steam all of the products rather than bake them. So as you can imagine, I don't have a commercial steamer in my house, so that wasn't how I originally made the products. But steaming the products just ends up with a much better quality product. You don't dry the product out, you actually add a little bit of moisture. The nutritional content is better if you steam it. So ultimately it was great for us to do that. And they were really flexible with me. And, I also fully admit I was patient with them, because they are used to making, like bao and scallion pancakes, and nobody knew what to do with my kale and my Swiss chard and my quinoa when I got there. And, we kind of learned together how to make it happen. And, I think, we're still working on it. There's a fair amount of turnover that happens in the food manufacturing industry. So I'm actually going out there later this afternoon to have a meeting with the team. There's a new manager there that I'm going to meet with, and we're going to talk about the next production run.
Thank you. So kind of heading back into the present now, knowing what you know now, what advice would you offer your younger self?
Oh, my younger self. Well, the first thing I tell her is to appreciate her youth. Because once you hit your mid-30s, things just start to fall apart. And everything I was playing tennis like 2 months ago, and I tore my calf muscle just like running. And I was just out of commission for 6 weeks from just running. And I play tennis every week. So it's not like it was a weird thing I was doing it. So appreciate your youth and your body and how amazing and resilient it is, and how much energy you have, and all of those things, and to really lean into that, and to do as much as you can. Like say yes to everything. Say yes to like, sure, I'll go for that run with my friend, or let's go hiking in Malibu, or whatever it may be. Just say yes, because you have energy to do so. Which I think I got once I was in my early 20s. I was much more in that mode. But I think, I would have been better off had I said yes to more things when I was in high school too. I think I also would have maybe told myself to look at entrepreneurship a little bit early in my career. I think I was afraid of kind of the what ifs and the unknowns and the scary parts of it. And I didn't focus on all the things that were really exciting about entrepreneurship, and the charting your own path, and the really, you're in charge of your own destiny nature of it, that you really don't have when you work at a company with, tens of thousands of employees. So I think those were the two main things. But I mean, honestly, I sometimes joke that I peaked with them when I was 27. I honestly had a great time in college in my 20s, and I was incredibly fortunate and lucky. I think that's another thing that I would tell myself and to tell everyone else. When luck isn't constant. And so when you see opportunities, like take them, hustle, make yourself open to seeing those opportunities, because things that maybe seem like they were because you were such a hard worker or so great or so smart when you were 23 were also kind of a bit of luck, and that doesn't always happen. So to really take those opportunities when they come along and make the most of them, and be constantly open to those new experiences and new people in your life that can help you grow.
Thank you. Now we're going to open up for questions in the audience if you have any at all. So if you do, just unmute yourself and chime in.
Or you can put it in the chat and we can say it for you.
I have a quick question. How do you cook them? You say, I'm looking at the website, it says under a minute. How would you cook them?
Yeah, so you just stick it in the microwave. Just this side up, stick it in the microwave. And depending on your microwave, it could be, if you have like a very intense one, it could be 30 to 40 seconds. If you have one that's more, maybe a little older, or like a cute retro style one, which I did buy one for events and then obviously I've never used, that takes more like a minute to make them. But I've never had anything take more than a minute. Although I did have a friend, when I first launched, she was like, I mean, it took me 1:20 to do it. And I was like, how? I did so much testing. And she's like, well, I did put 2 in at once. And I was like, well, that's different. If you put multiples in there, it's going to take longer. But yeah, that was a big portion of it, was that I needed it to be really convenient and really fast. And I think having spent as much time in the food industry, and especially in the natural foods industry, I think a lot of natural foods products sacrifice convenience because they think, like, because this is a healthy product, or this is a vegan product, or this is an organic product, people are going to be afraid of a microwave. But I think that cuts out so many people from the market. And I digress a little bit, but like some of the people in the natural industry, I think take a little bit too far. Like, I don't want people to go from eating, a Hershey's to having a green shake at Erewhon. Like, I just want people from going to have a Hershey's to like, this takes as much time as Hershey's, but like, it's much better for you. And so I think meeting people halfway is a very important thing that sometimes people miss in the food industry.
Perfect. Thank you.
Violet?
Oh,
sorry. Yes.
yeah, go ahead, Sarah.
What did entrepreneurship teach you as a person?
That's a good question. You learn so much about yourself when you're an entrepreneur, both doing entrepreneurship and working with other people, like I did when I was an executive of other people's company, as well as launching one myself. I think the thing that I learned the most is that I really love doing new things, and I really love solving new problems every day. And that is something that entrepreneurship is constantly feeding me, which is great. It's also, I learned I'm comfortable with a fair amount of chaos. It's something that I maybe didn't know beforehand because I worked in, I worked at Fox, I worked at General Mills, these very, very structured red tape bureaucracy type things. And in startups, it's pure chaos. Like I had to use my own laptop for the first 6 months in most jobs. Like and it's maybe not weird to you guys because you haven't had a lot of jobs, but like it's very weird that you have to like bring your own computer to go to your job. But that's something that happens when you're kind of doing your own thing, and especially launching my own business. It's every decision is mine, and that really tests your own resolve and your opinions and your ideas, because especially as a solo entrepreneur, there's only so much I can talk it out with other people. Nobody else cares as much as I'm going to care. And so you kind of just have to make a decision and test it out, and not be afraid of what's going to happen, and not be afraid of failing, and not be afraid of looking silly in front of your peers, because ultimately you're all going through it together. And I found, especially a lot of the entrepreneurs here in LA, when we all get real with each other, none of us really know what we're doing, and so we're all just kind of figuring it out, and being the kind of personality that's okay with that is really, really important.
Thank you. Okay, Violet, do you want to ask your question?
You mentioned meeting people halfway with regards to time. To what extent do you do that when it comes to like the health or taste of your ingredients? Because if people aren't, like, how do you reach the market of people who might not be used to like the taste of a green shake from Erewhon? And where do you have like a range of product ranging from like super intended for real health buffs as opposed to just like marginally healthier than like fast food? Or is your goal to find ingredients that taste something close to fast food but are like healthier?
Yeah. So my products are probably someplace in the middle of those two things. That's a good question. But I make sure, so there's a celebrity nutritionist named Kelly LeBeck here in LA, and she is a big proponent of this idea of the Fab Four, and I completely agree with her. It's this idea of combining protein, healthy vegetables, usually green vegetables, fats, and fiber. And when you combine those four things, you have something that is really satiating, and something that's going to keep you full for a long time. That's also really healthy when you have them in the combination. So when you have fats in something, you're kind of getting that hit that maybe you'd have from junk food. So I use extra virgin olive oil in these products to provide the healthy fats. Plus you get a little bit with like the chickpeas and the quinoa. There's a little fat with those, but that kind of gives your brain and your stomach the cues, the same kind of fat cues that you get from having other things that maybe have fats in them. But because it's a healthy fat, it's not saturated fat, there's no cholesterol. I mean, there's cholesterol in the eggs, but but like you get those things, and all of these triggers that you're getting are sending your brain messages that you're full, which is a lot of the problems with health food. Like a green juice, you're not really getting that much fiber because you're getting juice and not the pulp of the plant, and you're not getting any fat. I mean, I guess if you got a smoothie, you'd maybe get some fat with some almond butter or something like that, but you're not getting those combination of things that kind of signal those dopamine triggers in your brain that say, okay, this is making me feel good, this is making me feel full. And so that's kind of the idea, to have this mini meal concept that bridges all of those things. The products themselves I made range from the sun-dried tomato basil, which is 0 spicy, to my Thai sriracha, which is pretty legitimately spicy. One of my clients, he's an immigrant from India, and he was like, I'm an Indian and this is actually spicy to me. So like, this is spicy. Because I found a lot of frozen foods are pretty bland. And that was always a problem that I had. So I kind of play around with different things like that in terms of flavor profiles to also appeal to as many people as possible. As you said, kind of folks who are on all the different ends of the spectrum.
Juliana, do you want to ask a question?
Yeah, okay, so you mentioned that you have a meeting later today, which got me curious as to like what your normal day looks like as an entrepreneur.
Yeah, they're all very different, which is the kind of the nice thing about being an entrepreneur. So I'd say it's usually, so it's tough too because it's COVID. So it's I can tell you my day looks like now. A year from now, I don't know that it'll look like this. Um, but I'm doing a lot of, so I'll have like calls and check-ins with different agencies or freelancers that I have. I'll spend some time working on, maybe it's my social strategy, or maybe it's working on collaborations with other brands. Right now we're doing, putting postcards into each other's e-commerce orders. I fulfill the orders myself right now. So every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday afternoon, I'm packing boxes and going to UPS. Not everyone, but sometimes I'll combine all of them at once. So I'll do that. And then, yeah, sometimes it's going out to the manufacturing facility and it's working with the folks there. It's ordering ingredients, it's managing inventory, it's updating my QuickBooks accounting stuff. And then I also spent a lot of time, especially with COVID, doing like either webinars or workshops or that kind of thing, either focusing on certain specific topics, like maybe it's influencer marketing, or it's e-commerce during COVID or something like that with other entrepreneurs, because it's so hard to collaborate with other people right now in this virtual world, and to keep one's skills sharp when you don't work with a big team of people. And so I probably do anywhere from 3 to 5 hours of that every week too, to make sure that I'm constantly learning, and constantly meeting new people and hoping to learn from them too.
Sounds like you're a real lifelong learner. I think that's so important. I love that you touched on that. I actually have two quick questions. The first is, where can we, our goal, like we said, is to when we're back on campus, to have Power Veggie Bites available in the kiosk. I certainly can think of times on campus when I could really actually feel like I could go for one right now. This has made me quite hungry. So I think there's definitely a market for it. And I know that we have a number of students on this call too, who stay after school, who have had that same issue, right? They, Laura has talked about this a lot, that Postmates is expensive, might not have time to run to a store nearby, and that our options, we do have bars and the like on campus, but that's just not really satisfying. So where, though, until we're back on campus, where else can we find Power Veggie Bites?
Yeah, so you can buy them online at appletonsmarket.com, and I will ship them directly to you. Or if you want to go brick and mortar, we're at Opportunity Markets. There's a few of them around LA as well. And then in the Valley, we're at the Dairy. So a few places here in LA. I'm just dipping my toe ever so lightly into brick and mortar retail, because that wasn't pre-COVID, that wasn't part of my first year launch strategy. But again, as I said, when opportunity rises, they reached out to me and I was like, let's give it a try. So yeah, I would definitely love to have whomever wants to try some and give me all their feedback.
Yeah, wonderful. And then my second question was just about your packaging. And so, is that, you said it was patented, is that your patent, or is that the patent of the supplier of the packages?
Yeah, so it's the patent of the supplier of the packages. I'm definitely not a packaging engineer. There are some people, I've worked with packaging engineers, and they're great people and I love them. And I actually reached out to my packaging engineer from General Mills when I was trying to source this packaging and getting his recommendations, but he only knows General Mills type suppliers that are like, oh, so for like 1 million units, here's the price. Like, I'm not spending $300,000 on packaging. That's not really in scope right now. So yeah, I use their patent, and that's kind of baked into the cost of my product. It's a Taiwanese company that holds the patent, and there's only a few people that I've seen use something like this in the US. It's actually really funny. Somebody I met through I'm in a lot of Slack channels. For those of you who don't know, Slack is like a virtual chat text picture based thing. I don't know if you guys have it there, but at Marlboro, but they have a lot that are focused on either female founders or founders here in LA or startup CPG folks. And a person that I met through startup CPG, he launched a bao business in China, and then is launching one here. And he actually is using the same packaging supplier as me, which blew my mind because I'm like, it took me like 6 months to find these guys. And somehow somebody else here in LA, this company is based in Taiwan, we're both using the same packaging supplier. So the CPG world is also a very small world. That is what I will definitely tell everybody who's interested in food. If you really put yourself out there and you go to the events and you network and you learn as much as you can, you really can know a lot of really amazing, smart, cool people. And especially natural products, everyone's here to help. We want to see everyone else succeed because this is a growing industry and we want people to be healthier and we want the environment to be healthier. And so we're all here to help each other rise up.
Yeah, that's really inspiring and so interesting just to hear about the packaging, because I feel like that could be a course in and of itself, just how kind of packaging is, and a whole field of engineering for sure.
Definitely.
All right, Ashley and Laura, I think that's actually probably maybe we have time for one more of your questions, and then I think people will have to run to their next classes.
Perfect. Well, we do have one last question for you, Christina. What is next for you in Appleton's market? Where do you see yourself in 5 years?
Yeah, it's funny. I saw a little meme about this from another entrepreneur friend, and she said, "Where do I see myself in 5 years? I'm just trying to get to Thursday." Because that's really how entrepreneurship feels sometimes, where you're dealing with every single problem that comes up and everything, and sometimes it's really hard to kind of lift your head up and say, "Okay, where do I see this going?" But ultimately, I'd love to see this company in 5 years be a higher, high recognition national brand. I'd like to see myself have multiple different product varieties and multiple different product categories that are all serving this kind of same convenient mini meal function. So I'm really out to build a company that's helping people get more veggies, more fiber, more protein, healthy fats, all those things that Americans really aren't getting enough of. I think it's only like 1 in 10 Americans are getting enough fiber, which is crazy. So making sure that folks are getting the things that they want in a way that's convenient, that's tasty, and something that they actually want to eat and look forward to eating. And so that's where I see the company going in 5 years. I mean, hopefully it'll be maybe somewhere around 20, 25 products.
Wow. Well, thank you so much. And for those of you who are still on the call, maybe we can unmute ourselves and give a round of applause for Christina. It's so inspiring just to hear your journey from idea to, from concept to creation, and very helpful as well for I know that we have a number of students, foodpreneurs on this call too, who are very interested in, have either already started or are thinking about starting their own food related businesses. So to hear how you did it and how you tested your idea and actually got it manufactured is incredibly helpful. So thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, happy to help. And thank you so much for having me. It's always great to connect to people, and I'm excited to learn from you guys too. I mean, it's you are the next generation, and there are things that people who are in high school now know that I don't even know that I don't know. So we're excited to keep the dialogue open.
Wonderful. All right. Well, thank you everyone for coming today, and we look forward to seeing you at future events. Have a great weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you.